You probably think the smarter you are, the harder you are to fool. That feels logical. Intelligent people can spot patterns, think critically, and see through lies faster than most. So naturally, manipulators would target less intelligent people, right? Wrong? Research in cognitive psychology and behavioral science consistently shows the opposite. The smarter you are, the more vulnerable you may actually be to certain types of manipulation. And the worst part is, your own intelligence is exactly what makes it possible. Today, we are going to break down exactly why this happens, what the science says, and what you can do about it. Let's start with a concept that psychologists call my-side bias. A study published in the journal Thinking and Reasoning by researcher Keith Stanovich found that higher intelligence does not reduce a person's tendency to reason in a self-serving way. In fact, smarter people are often better at constructing arguments that justify what they already believe, not arguments that reflect the truth. Think about what that means for a moment. When a manipulator approaches an intelligent person, they don't try to force a belief on them. That would never work. Instead, they present information in a way that allows the intelligent person to arrive at the wrong conclusion on their own. They let the smart person's mind do the work for them. Because intelligent people trust their own reasoning so deeply, they rarely stop to question whether the reasoning itself has been compromised. They think, I thought this through carefully. I reached this conclusion myself. It must be right. That's the trap. Psychologists call this the smart person's blind spot. The assumption that because you are intelligent, your thinking is automatically reliable. There's a well-known psychological concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect. The idea that people with low knowledge in a subject tend to overestimate their ability. Most people have heard of it, but what most people don't know is that the reverse also exists, and it's just as dangerous. Highly intelligent and highly knowledgeable people often develop something researchers call earned overconfidence, because they have been right so many times in the past, because their intelligence has served them well. They begin to trust their judgment more than the situation actually warrants. A study from the Journal of Behavioral Decision-Making found that experts in a field were actually more susceptible to certain cognitive biases than non-experts, precisely because their expertise made them less likely to double-check their assumptions. Manipulators know this. They know that if they can position themselves as someone speaking to a smart person's level, using technical language, citing data, appealing to the person's sense of rational superiority, the smart person will engage with the argument instead of questioning the source. They flatter intelligence, and intelligence, like all human traits, responds to flattery. Here's perhaps the most important mechanism to understand. Intelligent people are extraordinarily good at rationalization, the mental process of creating logical explanations for things you have already decided to believe or do. Neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga's split-brain research showed that the human brain has what he called an interpreter, a mechanism that constantly creates logical narratives to explain our behavior, even when those narratives have nothing to do with the actual reason we acted. In simple terms, we don't reason our way to decisions as often as we think. We make decisions, often emotionally, and then use our intelligence to build a logical story around them after the fact. For intelligent people, this mechanism is stronger. They are better storytellers. They can construct more convincing justifications, And crucially, they can convince themselves. So when a manipulator plants an idea in a smart person's mind, the smart person doesn't just accept it. They build an entire logical framework around it. They make it their own. And now they will defend that idea with the full force of their intelligence, even though it was never really theirs to begin with. This is why some of the most educated people in history have fallen for propaganda, cults, and financial scams. It is not a failure of intelligence. It is intelligence being used against itself. Let's look at some concrete research. A study by psychologist David Perkins at Harvard found that when asked to reason through social and political problems, more intelligent people generated more arguments. But these arguments were disproportionately one-sided, supporting whatever initial position they had taken. Intelligence increased the volume of reasoning, but not its balance. Another study from Yale University, one that specifically looked at people with high scientific literacy and numeracy, found something striking. When politically charged data was presented to participants, people with the highest numerical ability were actually more likely to misinterpret the data in ways that supported their existing beliefs. Not less likely, more. The researchers concluded that intelligence, when combined with motivated reasoning, becomes a tool for confirming what you believe, not for discovering truth. And then there is a concept called complexity bias, the tendency of intelligent people to prefer complex explanations over simple ones. Manipulators exploit this by constructing elaborate, sophisticated-sounding justifications. A less intelligent person might say, "This sounds too complicated. I don't trust it." An intelligent person leans in. They enjoy the complexity. They want to understand it. And in trying to understand it, they get drawn in. This is not just theory. You can see this pattern everywhere once you know what to look for. Financial scams. The most sophisticated investment fraud cases, Bernie Madoff being perhaps the most famous, did not primarily target unsophisticated people. Madoff's victims included finance professionals, economists, and highly educated investors. His scheme worked because of its complexity and exclusivity. Intelligent people felt they had been smart enough to get access to something others couldn't understand. Cults and high-control groups. Research by cult expert Robert Lifton and others consistently shows that people with above-average intelligence are not underrepresented in high-control groups. In fact, many cults specifically recruited universities because idealistic, intelligent people searching for meaning are highly susceptible to sophisticated ideological frameworks. Workplace manipulation. In professional environments, intelligent employees are often the ones who get overloaded, exploited, and passed over, not because they are not capable, but because their intelligence makes them better at solving problems that other people create. They can always find a way to make something work. And manipulative managers know this and use it. So if intelligence alone doesn't protect you, what does? Psychologists point to several things. First, intellectual humility. Research from the University of Michigan found that people who scored high on intellectual humility, the willingness to recognize the limits of their own knowledge, made better decisions and were less susceptible to manipulation. This is not about being less confident. It's about knowing where your confidence is justified and where it isn't. Second, slowing down. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman's work on System 1 and System 2 thinking explains that most manipulation works by engaging your fast, intuitive thinking. System 1. It bypasses your analytical mind entirely. The single most effective protection is deliberately slowing down before making decisions, especially ones that feel urgent or emotionally charged. Urgency is almost always a manipulation tactic. Third, asking who benefits. This is a simple but powerful habit. Whenever someone is trying to convince you of something, ask yourself, if I believe this, who gains? If the answer isn't you, that doesn't mean you're being manipulated. But it means the question is worth asking. Fourth, seeking disconfirmation. Instead of looking for evidence that supports your current view, actively look for evidence against it. This directly counters my side bias and is one of the most reliable ways to keep your reasoning honest. Intelligence is extraordinary. It has built everything humans have ever created. But like every strength, it has a shadow. The shadow of intelligence is the belief that your mind is always working for you, when sometimes the right conditions can turn it against you. The people least likely to be manipulated are not the smartest people in the room. They are the most self-aware. They know their mind can be fooled, and that knowledge alone makes them harder to fool than any IQ score ever could. Stay curious. Stay skeptical, especially of your own certainty. And as always, that's just how we're wired. If this video made you think differently about intelligence, drop a comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts. And if you want more psychology content that actually helps you understand yourself and others, subscribe. New videos every week.